During World War II, clean water was as vital to a soldier's survival as food or ammunition. Battles were fought in jungles, deserts and bomb-scarred villages where safe water was a rare luxury. Rivers were poisoned by corpses, fuel and disease. Wells were sabotaged. Swamps bred sickness faster than bullets could kill. Dysentery, cholera and typhoid ravaged armies from Africa to Asia, crippling divisions before they even reached the front. In a war driven by machines and firepower, survival often came down to something as basic and as fragile as a single sip of water. Yet soldiers adapted. Without modern purifiers, filters or bottled water, they turned to chemistry, ingenuity and whatever nature offered. Their tools were crude but clever. Sand, charcoal, fire, sunlight and a few bitter-tasting pills that carried an army across continents. Let's start with something primitive that worked wonders: charcoal and sand. Out in the field, soldiers didn't have fancy gear or laboratory kits. What they did have was dirt, fire and resourcefulness. They'd burn wood until it became charcoal, crush it into fine powder, and layer it with sand and gravel inside a tin can. Mess kit, or even the hollow shell of a grenade casing. When they poured muddy water through it, something magical happened. The liquid that dripped out was clearer, cleaner, and far less deadly. This wasn't a myth. Charcoal absorbs impurities, removes bad odours, and filters out many organic toxins. The same principle drives modern activated carbon filters today. Of course, it didn't kill every germ in the book, but it stripped enough filth to make the next step safer. Soldiers often boiled or disinfected the filtered water afterward, turning a puddle of sludge into a lifeline. That little trick of charcoal and sand became the first stage of a multi-layered survival system. Then came the science, and chemistry met soldiering in the form of Halazone tablets. Developed in the 1930s and issued widely by the US Army during World War II, Halazone was, chlorine chemistry packed into pocket form. Each small white tablet could disinfect about a quart of water. You'd just drop it in, wait for about half an hour, and you had something pretty close to drinkable. It worked by releasing chlorine, the same chemical that sanitizes modern city water supplies, neutralizing bacteria and viruses that are, completely invisible to the naked eye. Soldiers joked that it made water taste like, swimming pool soup, but honestly, no one complained when the alternative was a week doubled over with dysentery. Halazone wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. Humidity could kill its potency, and the tablets had, pretty short shelf lives. But for soldiers marching through the jungles of Burma, the deserts of North Africa, or the islands of the Pacific, those tiny pills were honestly revolutionary. They were light, fast and simple. Survival chemistry in tablet form. Every modern chlorine or iodine tablet really owes its existence to those early wartime experiments. But when all else failed, soldiers turned to the oldest weapon in the book, fire. Boiling was the gold standard, reliable, timeless and foolproof if done right. Every soldier's mess kit could double as a laboratory. A small M1942 gasoline stove, a few sticks or even a hasty fire built inside a steel helmet could bring water to a rolling boil. 10 minutes at full heat killed almost everything: bacteria, viruses, protozoa, leaving the water safe enough to drink. Soldiers learned to cover their pots to prevent evaporation and to reboil water even if it looked clean. A mountain stream could appear crystal clear and still hide invisible killers like giardia or typhoid. Boiling took time, and time was a luxury in combat. But when firewood and fuel were available, nothing beat it. In every manual, every training film, one rule stood out: if in doubt, boil it. Sometimes survival came down to pure improvisation. Cloth filtration was one of the simplest tricks in the field, and honestly, one of the most common. Soldiers would pour water through a folded shirt, bandana, or even a sock. It didn't kill bacteria, but it trapped mud, algae, insects, and floating debris. When a soldier was kneeling beside a bomb crater puddle or a trench half filled with rainwater, even a dirty scrap of cloth could make the difference between drinking poison and staying alive. They learned to fold cloth in layers for finer filtration, each layer catching more grit. It wasn't elegant, but, it worked. In war, survival often depended on what you could do with what you had. Then came something truly unexpected, a discovery that hinted at the future of water purification. Soldiers began noticing that if they left bottles of water sitting in clear glass or canteens under the blazing sun, the water often made them less sick. They didn't know why, but it worked. What they had stumbled upon was solar disinfection, or what modern scientists now call SODIS. Sunlight, especially ultraviolet rays, destroys bacteria and viruses by breaking down their DNA. Even the heat itself, when water temperatures rose above 50 degrees Celsius, helped weaken pathogens. For soldiers in tropical zones or desert outposts, sunlight was a free, invisible ally. It wasn't fast, and it wasn't perfect, but in the absence of fuel or tablets, it gave hope. The roots of one of today's most effective low-tech purification methods began in those improvised experiments under the wartime sun. By 1945, soldiers around the world had learned a powerful truth: no single method was enough. The smartest among them combined techniques. First strain the water through cloth, then run it through charcoal and sand, and finally boil or chlorinate it. Each step made the next safer. That multi-barrier approach became the foundation for modern water treatment systems. Soldiers on the front lines were unknowingly writing the rulebook for the world's future survival technology. Their innovations weren't born in comfort or luxury. They came from desperation, from the need to keep moving, to stay alive, to march one more mile. A soldier's survival wasn't guaranteed by his rifle or his rations, but by his ability to think fast and adapt. In the mud of Europe, the deserts of Africa, and the jungles of the Pacific, men turned filth into drinkable water using grit, fire, and ingenuity. Every clean sip was a small victory against a world that wanted them dead. Today, when hikers drop chlorine tablets into a stream or preppers build homemade charcoal filters, they're unknowingly echoing the lessons learned by soldiers 80 years ago. Their methods were rough, their tools crude, but their results changed survival forever.